Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Well, today we're going to jump in and look at part 3 of the repurposing of the Disney Haunted Mansion display. I've made quite a bit of progress, almost accidentally of some sort. I didn't record any of it. I was just going to try to see how this was going to work and then try to explain it, and got a little carried away. But you know me, you've seen me do those things before. But we're still going to take a look at it, and then I owe you a couple of tutorials. So let's explain then what has happened, and we'll take a look at it. Okay, so let me explain a couple of things of what happened. First, I sat down and I was going to start looking at painting the brickwork, and I was like, well, let me start mixing some paints together and try to get them close enough to the gate that looks okay. And then once I started mixing paint, I just started painting, and it went on so incredibly easy that I knocked it out within about 6 or 8 minutes, quite honestly. But let me explain what I did, and then we're going to take a look at the paint. So first is the paint. Okay, so I use different varieties of paint, and I'm going to explain I use 3 colors. Right, I mixed the paint a little by little and just stirred it up on the paintbrush till it went on. It looked pretty good. And so the paint colors that I used was a nutmeg brown. Now any dark brown will work. This is just what I had laying around, nutmeg brown. I used a barn red. Okay, so a barn red. And these are all acrylic crafts, just craft paint. You can buy them at any craft store locally. And then I used pumpkin, just an orange pumpkin color to kind of mix in there to get more of that orange tone. Now, I just chose these based on really the colors that they looked underneath, and thought maybe if I mix some of that together that it'll look okay. And I think it looks okay, and we're gonna see that here in a moment. And really, once I mixed those up, I just started brushing it on. Now, I will tell you that to get more of a natural look, I then took individual colors of more of the barn red and more really of the orange, and maybe a little 2 of these combined, and painted individual bricks different colors to kind of have it stand out a little bit. It's real subtle, and you'll see that, but I think it adds to the realism of the brickwork. Okay, so that part is done. We're going to take a look at it. The next part that I wanted to experiment with, I told you that I was debating on whether or not to put in grout. So we had our whole floor redone a while back. We had some counter backsplashes done, and so we have extra grout laying around. And so I've done that before. I did that a couple of years ago on my Pennywise diorama, but that was carved with a pencil. This was carved with the hot wire foam factory tools, which, as you saw, a little bit, thicker grout lines. And so I tried it a couple of different ways on a small little test piece, and it was not working the way that it worked on the Pennywise diorama. I went about it wrong. So in order to fix that, I simply mixed up some grout. Once I started putting that on, it caked it on pretty good, and I'll be honest with you, it scared me a little bit because there's a lot of work went into this so far. And so I had to work really, really fast. And so there was no time to grab the camera. There was no time to set anything up. And the next thing you know, it's done and it's wiped clean. I think I'm still gonna have to go back and wipe it a little bit just to make sure that it looks the way it's supposed to, but that's gonna be in a day or 2 after it's completely dried. You're gonna see it. I think you're gonna think it looks good. I think it looks really good, certainly better than it did. And what I owe you is in the next few days, I'm gonna make a small little test piece. I'm gonna carve it ahead of time. I'm gonna paint it ahead of time. I will show you the painting process of the orange and browns and reds, and we'll go through and paint it. Once that dries, which your time on the video will be a fraction of a second, then we'll take and mix up some more grout, and I will grout it and clean it and show you how I did all that. So you're not gonna miss it. You're just gonna have to wait for a minute on it. So let me jump off the tripod and show you where we're at now. Keep in mind, it's still drying. And then what we're gonna do after that is we're actually gonna put that grass layer down on the camera. You're going to see that live, and we'll get that knocked out and done. And then I think really all that's left is working on that fence. We'll talk about that here in a moment. Let's take a look and see what you think. Okay, so here we are. I've got things kind of sit down. Now, I didn't do a whole lot to the top part here. Obviously, this was already painted. I did paint, and we'll kind of see over here. It did paint. It's not completely color matched, and that's okay because, as you can see, once this is on there, you're never going to see it anyway. You're never going to see any of this because it's all going to be blocked. So I'm not really concerned with it. What I am concerned with is how this is turning out. So that is the different kind of paint on there. You can see right in there is sort of a little more red, a little more orange, but it's very subtle. You can see some orange in and around, a little bit of reds, a little bit of orange as I kind of scroll along here. But look at the grout lines, and they're still drying, so they still require a little bit of time to dry. But all in all, I think it looks really, really good. And the sides are obviously done, and those are coming along really nice as we go along each side here. And then as we come down and look at the area by the gate, you can kind of see how it's starting to take shape. That's a little more orange, a little more in line with the gate. Once we get the grass, now there will be grass up front here too, and grass along and hanging down, and you'll see it's going to look, at least in my thought process right now, it's going to look pretty good. And you can see the grout lines drying here as well. A little more white. I may take a wash after this is all done. Maybe not. I'll see what it looks like when it's all together, and maybe put a dark wash on it to darken it up just a little bit more. I don't know. Some of this is still drying. It looks a little darker. You can see how it's starting to dry a little more on top and it's starting to turn white. And this is the side that is the driest, and you can see how that's turning out there. And so I will show you how to do all of this on a much smaller piece. But like I said, once you start, it requires your full attention, and you've got to really go. You've got to clean it. You've got to. So the way I did it, I mixed up the grout, smeared the grout on honestly with my fingers. Just put a pretty thick coat all into those grout lines, and then rubbed sort of circles around as I went down the length of the brickwork, trying to get that into every groove as good as possible. And then obviously you can imagine the gray is the color of it when it was mixed up. It was caked all everywhere. Up here, it was a complete mess. And so I'm trying to wipe that off with my fingers. I've got a small sponge that I'm dipping in water and then kind of wiping it down as it starts to dry. And then filling in gaps and wiping more, and then taking wet paper towels and kind of blotting to clean off the area. And I can see an area right there that some of the paint has come off as a result of that. And that's okay, because it does look weathered and worn, and nobody would know. It actually adds to the flavor. I may touch it up a little bit, I may not. I guess it depends on as we get closer. I see more as I'm coming down through here. So you see it is a little rough on the process, but it is true grout. It doesn't look too bad, quite honestly. I think it looks pretty good. And then once we get the grass on and the fence on, and then place all the buildings and accessories up, I think we're gonna have a pretty cool looking display. So it is certainly coming along better. And then look at, and tell me in the comments too, look at the piece that's done with the grout versus the piece on top that's done with no grout. And which one do you think looks better? Be honest with me. If you think the darker lines of the top looks better, then let me know. If you think the grout lines look better, then let me know that. I personally think the grout lines look good. I think it looks incredibly realistic, and I'm very pleased with the way this is turning out so far. It is a lot of work, but sometimes all the work pays off in the end, and it looks, it's the little details that make the difference. So with that, let's get back on the tripod. Let me clean some of this stuff up, and we're gonna start putting the grass down on this area here to see if we can get that knocked out and done. And then we'll wrap this segment up for the evening. Okay, so we got everything set up. I've got a tray of moss that I think is some of the older moss. It looks hopefully similar to this. I do have some more dead colored moss. If I need that to kind of blend it together, I will. There is some of that in here. I think this will work though. I think it'll look okay. And then I've got my white PVA glue. This is just Craft Smart glue that I got at Michael's a year or so ago. And we're just gonna pour out some on this paper plate. And I'm gonna pour out probably about that much for now. I may need more, I may not. And I say that much is about that much, big dollop there. And then I'm gonna start taking these little plants out because we're gonna try to mix this grass over. And I'm gonna be pretty liberal when I put this stuff on, right? So I'm just gonna take it and start putting this on. Now it's gonna make somewhat of a mess, and that's okay. Okay, I think you can see here that I've put quite a bit of grass on it. I used a lot of glue. I went very, very liberal with the glue. Then you saw me start putting it on with my hands because the sponge that I had was just too big and I needed to get it up close to this brick wall here. And so it was just easier to kind of smother it on with my hands and then use a paper towel to get all that off before I started putting the grass down. And then you saw I put a lot of grass down. It's gonna match almost perfectly. I think it's the same type of grass, which is great. So I think it's gonna match perfectly. It's very thick right now. So we're gonna let that dry for a few hours. That needs to sit and dry. And so we will take that off. After it's dry, we'll just kind of, brush it and with our fingers and our hands and get most of that off. And then we'll add that isopropyl alcohol and the glue water mixture to kind of crunch it down and make it crunchy. At least I think we will. I don't know. I haven't thought if I want to do that on this particular display or not, but I don't see why I wouldn't. I do that almost every time. So that'll be done. And then we'll be ready for the fence. So there you have it. Okay, well, hopefully you saw how easy it is to put the grass on. It's not difficult. So what I have to do now is I got to put that piece out in our garage. It is 111 degrees right now. So in the garage, that means it's probably pushing 115 or so. And so this top piece will sit out in the garage and just bake and allow that white PVA glue to just harden up. And then once that happens tomorrow, I'll scrape all the excess off and put it, that piece is then done. And so because I did a lot of work and I didn't film any of it, I feel a little bit bad. And like I said, I owe you some tutorials, and that's gonna come, I promise you, here within the next week or so. You will see the tutorials. But I want to give you a sneak peek now. I've taken the liberty of bringing everything Haunted Mansion out, and I've got it sort of set up. We're missing the fence and some of the other details, obviously, but I want you to take a look at it like I get to see it, and then hopefully that'll give you motivation to do one of these yourself. So let's jump off of here and see how it looks. Okay, so here's how it's starting to look. I think it's going to look just fine. You can see from when we first started, this front piece is drying. You can see the start to become lighter there. Again, I may take a wash to that. That's how the gate's gonna fit. And then you can kind of see how we're starting to look in general. Man, I love the Haunted Mansion. I just wish those lights were purple and green or just purple. And that is so annoying seeing it flash like that. I saw another YouTube video where some guy went in and rewired all that. I don't know that I want to plan to do all that, but kind of goofy looking personally like that, in my opinion. But it is what it is. That's the only piece that lights up on this entire place. Obviously, we've got to put lights in, shining up on the haunted hearse. We got to put some lights back there on the ghost. I think I'm going to run the crypts. So the crypts are behind the haunted ghost, the hitchhiking ghost. I think I'm going to run those the length of, kind of start over here. You can't see where I'm at. Start over here behind this tree, and then run those all the way over to behind the house and make them probably a little bit taller, sort of like they are at Disneyland with those crypts. I think that'll look pretty good sitting back there as a backdrop there. And then I'm not sure what I'm going to put back there, maybe some hedges or something like that. But once the fence is up, this is going to look a whole lot better. But again, it is not looking too bad right now. It's coming together quite nice. Okay, well, hopefully that gives you a better look at how this whole project is progressing. I'm very happy with it. I hope you guys see that there's progress being made. I owe you a couple of tutorials. I know they're coming, I promise. So you'll get to see everything that happened behind the scenes. And so what do we got coming next? Well, really, we've got to start working on the fence. And I'll be honest with you, the fence, I tried a little prototype earlier this week. It did not go well. I tried super glue and it works. I tried melting some plastic and putting it together like that. That also worked, but it wasn't great. It's just very time consuming. And when it's all said and done, I think a pre-made fence is going to look just fine. It's going to save a lot of time. And it's going to all look the same minus the gate. No matter what I do, I can't replicate the fence and the gate anyway. So it's going to be close. It's going to be a fence around the Haunted Mansion with pillars, and it's going to be colored the same. So I think irrespective of how we build it, it's going to look good. And so that's what's coming next. And so you'll see that. And then we're going to look at working on adding some lights, adding some grass, adding the final details. I told you I'm going to take that mausoleum, and that is this little piece here that I made. It's got all of our names on it to include our dogs. And so I'm going to make another one probably a lot longer to where it kind of runs the whole length of that side and put that into play, get that painted up and a little taller so you can see it a little bit better. I got to run the lights and get all that stuff wired up, and then we should be done. So probably at least 2, maybe 3 more tutorials on this particular piece, and we're going to be done and call this one finished. So as always, if you've liked this video, make sure you click the like button. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. It certainly helps the channel to grow. It helps me personally, and I appreciate every single subscriber. And it keeps me motivated to keep throwing content out just like this. Hopefully you guys are learning. I love to answer your questions in the comments, so please keep those coming. If you have any questions at all, drop them in the comments. If you have suggestions, I love to hear them. I take everyone into consideration. So with that, we got another one coming here in another day or two. So take care of yourselves. We'll talk to you again real soon.